Hi, I'm very happy to be here. I will also speak English because I don't speak Portuguese. But I speak Russian, so it's, I have a little claim to fame there. I'm a director of Center for Entrepreneurship and Innovation of an institute which is only 4 months old, and which MIT is helping us create. So I will speak a little bit about that, but I also wanted to to explain why I am here, apart from the fact that I was invited. What do I have to do with MIT Portugal program? What do I have to do with Portugal altogether? It's the first time in the country, which I really like, in fact, and I probably will be coming more. But what can I share that's relevant? And very interestingly, if I look back at my life, yes, I used to be a scientist. I used to be an investor. I actually spent a few years being a partner at a venture fund, making semi-meaningful investments. I am an entrepreneur. I've started 5 companies, 3 of which are still alive, and one of them I'm involved with very actively. But for the past several years, I've been, I would say, a glorified administrator. I used to be a director for grants and investments in Skolkovo Foundation, which has been set up by Russian government to further the cause of creating entrepreneurship-based and innovation-based economy in Russia. Russia, as you might know, is a pretty large country which is entirely based, the entire economy is based on oil, gas, and base metals, on extraction and a little bit of doing something with it, but that's it. And it has become obvious in the early 2000s, at the turn of the century, let's put it this way, that it's not the way it can continue for a long time. It's not that the oil is nearing to end, which it is, but if the country keeps in that way, it will stop being a meaningful country very soon. It will lose all its talent. It'll become just a raw materials source for the rest of the world. So the government tried to make semi-meaningful steps towards creating an innovations-based economy. I felt that it's a very meaningful path for Russia to take, so I became involved in it. Skolkovo Foundation is yet another attempt of Russian government. It's attempt to create Kendall Square, for those who know what Kendall Square is, on the outskirts of Moscow. So it's an attempt to create a cluster of innovation near Moscow, which would include a high-tech, meaningful, forward-looking graduate research institution, which would be in the middle of a small city, with technoparks, with small companies and large companies, and some living environment. So I am now part of that graduate research institution which we're trying to create. Why was this need in Skolkovo project? Well, it was an attempt to create an environment that will be conducive to making entrepreneurs a more typical species in Russian environment. And when I look at Portugal, it's actually very similar. There are more similarities than I realized before I started to consider Portugal. If you look at 2 countries, and from my discussions in the past, it looks like the only difference is, the fact that in Russia the average temperature now is -10, and it's +10 here, and Russia is much larger, and there is a lot of oil. Pretty much everything else is the same. The internal market is pretty small. You have to go global here, you have to go global there. There are about 120 million people there, but their buying power, well, as Charlie pointed out, it's really small compared to 5 billion people in the rest of the world. Educated workforce, yes, workforce is very educated here. It's very educated there, but there are very few entrepreneurs. And if you look at the knowledge economy and at management which is trained to take care of knowledge-based startups, there are very few people here that can do that. There are very few people there that can do that. It's not Boston, it's not Silicon Valley. We have to create that. So it's another similarity. A little, if any, smart money. I don't know how many true bona fide venture capital firms are in Portugal. In Russia, there are about 10, it's a country of 120 million people, about 10 venture capital firms. On average, they have about $50 million worth of money, each of them. They've made, on average, 3 investments in the past 4 years. I mean, that's the history, period. Nothing to write home about, right? So it is the very, very beginning. I hope it's not as bad here, right? It is? Okay, well, there's another similarity. So it's not Silicon Valley, it's not Boston, but we have to get there. And we're essentially facing a very steep learning curve, and there is no way around it. We pretty much have to follow that. Another thing which I feel is difficult is the water cooler effect. You know that around water coolers, people always aggregate. So in Boston, you can throw a stone and hit 5 entrepreneurs. In Silicon Valley, you pretty much do the same and you hit 5 investors. Here, it's way more rarefied. That's why a venue like this is a very important thing. You suddenly have more than 2 people around you who care about entrepreneurship, who care about technological innovation. So the more of competitions like that happen, the better. You actually have a visibility that you're not alone. Being an entrepreneur is a very lonely thing. I know it myself. So suddenly seeing people who care about the same around you is actually very good. And you can find somebody who have made your mistakes before and maybe can educate it about that. You can find somebody who can help you or point you towards somebody who can help. It's really good. It's creating networks. One thing which I feel is also common about both countries and which gives me hope is that there is good science and good technology in both cases. So we actually have something to build this technological innovation and technological entrepreneurship on top of. So we can go forward. So I'm not going to repeat lessons. It'd be very repetitious. I would start with failures and fail fast and fail smart. And I would go all the way through the list of Charlie. Following Charlie is really bad. What I would like to remind you that being an entrepreneur is seeing a glass half full all the time. Considering that I failed so many times, but every single time you pick yourself up because you always have to believe that there is something in the end of the tunnel. You have to follow through. And we pretty much need to start building our ecosystem. We start, it's not only turning to your own company and trying to build your company. It's also turning outside. If you've been a successful entrepreneur, share it with other people. Try to be a mentor. It's not a tremendous amount of time that you spend, but you will be helping others. You will create a network. Share your contacts. Create sort of interest groups and participate in this kind of competitions. It's very important too. Even if you don't win, you win by meeting other people. You win by showing yourself out. You will learn from your mistakes. More experienced people will point you the mistakes which are most obvious, and you might not have to do them yourself. You would be better off. So don't underestimate the positive PR of being an entrepreneur. I hope that 2, 3, 4 years down the road, in Portugal, the figure of entrepreneur will be a figure of a hero, especially if it's a technological entrepreneur. It's becoming this way in Russia, and I can see how things are turning. Even a Russian president, every single time he is on the TV, he mentions something technological and innovative. Oftentimes he makes mistakes, but nobody notices anyway. Yeah. So thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for inviting me. I hope this is going to be fun and great learning experience. Thank you.